For centuries, humanity has been told one story about the crucifixion of Jesus, a story meant to inspire guilt, obedience, and fear. But Edgar Cayce, the famous American mystic often called the sleeping prophet, offered a completely different understanding. According to Cayce, the cross was never meant to symbolize suffering or divine punishment. Instead, it represented a sacred meeting point, the union between heaven and earth, spirit and matter. Cayce described the vertical beam as the connection between the divine and the human, while the horizontal beam symbolized the plane of physical experience, time, space, and human emotion. At their intersection lies the mystery of human existence. Each of us carries our own cross, not as a burden of pain, but as a portal, a moment where our soul decides whether to remain asleep in matter or awaken to its true divine nature. In this view, Jesus was not a helpless victim nailed to a symbol of death. He was a conscious being who chose the cross as a tool for transformation, a bridge between the seen and unseen worlds. The wood that supported his body represented the weight of the physical realm, while his willingness to endure it revealed the power of the awakened spirit. Cayce believed that the crucifixion was not about suffering, but about the voluntary descent of divine consciousness into the densest form of existence to guide humanity toward awakening. To Edgar Cayce, the crucifixion was never a tragedy, it was a sacred initiation. The place we call Calvary was not just a hill outside Jerusalem, it symbolized a state of consciousness that every soul must one day experience. It represents the moment when we face our deepest fears, our pain, and the illusions that keep us bound to the material world. In that confrontation, something profound occurs, the ego dies, and the spirit begins to awaken. Cayce taught that humanity has misunderstood the true meaning of the cross. Over the centuries, it was turned into a symbol of punishment and guilt. But originally, it was a sign of liberation, a map of spiritual transformation. Each person carries their own cross, which is not meant to crush them but to elevate them. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every loss, is an opportunity to transcend the limitations of the physical self and remember the divine light within. When Jesus stretched out his arms upon the wood, Cayce said, he was not surrendering to death but embracing the totality of the human experience. His act was a demonstration that the soul can traverse matter without being consumed by it. The cross, then, is not a sentence, it's a code, showing us how spirit and matter coexist, how heaven and earth meet within us. Cayce's message was clear, the cross was never about suffering, it was always about awakening. Each of us can lift our own cross, not to endure endless pain, but to walk through it and discover the radiant power that has always been hidden inside. According to Edgar Cayce, the crucifixion was not an execution, it was a moment of profound energetic transformation. He described it as the culmination of a long spiritual process that Jesus had been preparing for throughout his life. Every miracle, every act of compassion, and every teaching was part of a gradual elevation of vibration, a raising of the body's frequency until it could no longer be confined by physical matter. In this higher understanding, Jesus did not die on the cross, he transcended it. Cayce compared it to water turning into vapor when exposed to heat. When consciousness reaches a certain vibration, it changes states. The agony of the body was real, but beneath the pain, the spirit expanded into full awareness of its eternal nature. While the flesh suffered, the inner Christ observed with divine serenity, knowing that death was only an illusion, a shadow cast by human perception. Cayce emphasized that the crucifixion was not a moment of defeat but of absolute victory. Humanity needed a living example that it is possible to move through suffering without being destroyed by it, to pass through the valley of death and emerge transformed. Jesus didn't escape the human condition, he entered it fully and showed us that no physical limitation, no pain, and no fear can imprison the awakened soul. For Cayce, the cross was the ultimate symbol of transmutation, the sacred moment when matter yields to spirit, when mortality reveals immortality. It was not the end of Christ's journey, but the doorway through which divine consciousness fully entered human experience, leaving behind a luminous path for all souls to follow. Edgar Cayce taught that what happened on the cross was not a one-time miracle, but a revelation of what is possible within every human being. Jesus' transformation was meant to show that the path to resurrection lies within us all. Every time we choose love over fear, truth over illusion, or forgiveness over resentment, we undergo our own inner crucifixion, the death of the ego and the birth of the divine self. Cayce revealed that the blood shed on the cross was not simply a symbol of pain or sacrifice. He described it as liquid light, the physical vessel of divine energy flowing through the human form. Blood, he said, carries the frequency of consciousness itself. When Christ's blood touched the earth, it was not a tragedy, it was a cosmic event. The divine vibration of an awakened being merged with the planet, forever altering the energetic field of humanity. Through this act, a new possibility was anchored on earth, the awakening of Christ consciousness within every soul. The crucifixion, then, was not a demand for suffering but a divine infusion of light, an energetic activation meant to awaken the sleeping spirit in all of us. For Cayce, this was the true purpose of the sacrifice, not to appease an angry God, but to plant the seed of divine remembrance within human hearts. Each time we meditate on that light, each time we act with compassion or raise our consciousness beyond fear, we are awakening that same Christ energy within ourselves. The cross was never the end of the story. It was the moment humanity received the blueprint for spiritual evolution, the reminder that the divine does not dwell above us, but lives and breathes within. Edgar Cayce revealed that two realities coexisted within Jesus during the crucifixion, the human and the divine. On one side stood Jesus of Nazareth, the man who felt hunger, exhaustion, betrayal, and pain. On the other was the Christ consciousness, the eternal, unshakable awareness of unity with God. Cayce explained that these two aspects were not in conflict but worked together to demonstrate a profound truth: it is possible to live completely within the human experience without being consumed by it. When Jesus cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Cayce said this was the voice of the human, feeling the abyss of separation that all souls encounter in their darkest moments. Yet soon after, when Jesus declared, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit," it was the Christ within speaking, the divine remembrance that separation was never real. The crucifixion became the bridge between these two states of awareness, showing humanity that the divine is never absent, even in suffering. For Cayce, the true sacrifice was not blood, but consciousness. Christ willingly limited himself to human conditions, forgetting his divine origin for a moment, so that he could remember it again in the face of death, teaching us the same path. This revelation shattered the idea of a wrathful God demanding payment in blood. There was no punishment, only a sacred demonstration of love and awakening. Jesus descended into the depths of human pain, not to satisfy divine anger, but to show that even in the darkest shadow, light is present, and that the same light dwells within every human soul, waiting to be remembered. According to Edgar Cayce, the cross was not a new symbol invented by Christianity. It existed thousands of years before the time of Jesus, in Atlantis, Egypt, and India, as a sacred emblem of spirit entering matter. The vertical line represented the descent of divine energy from heaven into the physical world, while the horizontal line symbolized the soul's journey through time, space, and human experience. Where the two lines meet lies the true mystery, the point where heaven and earth, eternity and mortality, meet within the human heart. Cayce explained that when Christ was crucified, this ancient symbol was reactivated for all of humanity. It was as though a dormant code buried deep within the collective soul was suddenly awakened. From that moment on, the image of the cross resonated in the subconscious of every human being, not because of dogma, but because it speaks to something ancient and eternal within us. Whenever we look at the cross, Cayce said, we feel a faint remembrance, an echo of our own spiritual journey. The soul recognizes the pattern: descent from the divine, immersion in matter, and eventual transformation back into light. The intersection of the cross reminds us that this process happens within the heart, the alchemical center where pain becomes wisdom and the ego transforms into awareness. For this reason, the cross spread across cultures and ages, not as a symbol of conquest, but as a universal spiritual language. When Jesus opened his arms upon the wood, he wasn't only embracing humanity, he was activating the memory of our divine origin, reminding us that we, too, are suspended between spirit and matter, destined to rise beyond both. For Edgar Cayce, the resurrection was not merely a miraculous event that happened 2,000 years ago, it was the ultimate symbol of what awaits every soul. He described it as the triumph of spirit over matter, of consciousness over death. Jesus did not return to prove his power, he rose to show humanity its true destiny, that life is eternal, and that the divine spark within us can never be extinguished. Cayce revealed that the resurrection was the awakening of vibration, a moment when Christ's frequency became one with the earth. Through this act, he left behind a permanent energetic pathway, a bridge connecting the physical and the spiritual realms. Every soul that seeks truth, light, or compassion walks upon that same bridge, consciously or not. The resurrection, then, was not a single event. It is an ongoing process unfolding within each of us as we awaken to our divine nature. Cayce often said, "The Christ is not a man, the Christ is a pattern." It is the divine blueprint within every soul, the potential to rise above fear, limitation, and illusion. The crucifixion was the descent into darkness, the resurrection was the return to light. Together, they form the eternal rhythm of spiritual evolution, the same pattern that guides every soul through its own cycles of death and rebirth, ignorance and awakening. And so, the message Cayce brought forth from the spirit world was clear: the resurrection was not only Jesus' story, it is humanity's story. It is your story. Each act of love, forgiveness, or awakening is a resurrection in miniature, a reminder that the Christ light still lives within you, waiting patiently to rise again. So what if the story of the crucifixion was never meant to be a tale of suffering and punishment, but a map to our own spiritual awakening? What if every trial, every heartbreak, every crucifixion we face in life is really an invitation to rise, just as Jesus did, not in body, but in spirit? Edgar Cayce's readings remind us that the same divine force that resurrected Christ is alive within each of us. It's the quiet whisper that urges you to forgive when it's hardest, to love when fear tries to close your heart, and to believe that even in the darkest night, the light has not left you, it's only waiting to be remembered. The story of Jesus is not just history. It's our blueprint for transformation. And the cross, once seen as a symbol of death, becomes instead the key to life eternal, the union of the human and the divine within us all. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to reflect: what part of you is ready to rise again? Subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the hidden teachings of Edgar Cayce and other unsolved spiritual mysteries. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next revelation. If this story opened your mind, please like this video, it helps more seekers find this message. And share your thoughts below. Do you believe the resurrection was a one-time miracle, or a living energy still transforming us today? The truth is closer than you think, and it's waiting, just beyond the veil.